which way you shake it, advertising is a competitive field with many barriers to entry. So by sharing stories and advice from those who've already broken in, we as students and recent grads can apply some of their strategies to forge our own career path, but make it your own. Rich Pieczynski is going to be our North Star this week. He's a personable client service legend with 20 years of experience at Leo Burnett in Chicago, as well as other great agencies in the city we both call home. Today, Rich is breaking into academia. He is lecturing at both Loyola University in Chicago and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. This episode breaks down how to build relationships in the virtual world, and he discusses what it takes to be an A+ account team member. He knows his stuff. So, for more info on Rich and his curated recommended resources, swipe over to Instagram and look up Entering Ad. A lot of great stuff there, I promise you that. This is the Breaking and Entering podcast, and I am your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Rich Pieczynski, welcome again to the Breaking and Entering podcast. This is our second take, so I hope it turns out great.
Sounds good. Good to see or hear you again, Gino.
That's right. How have you been? You are in the suburbs of Chicago, just like me. The weather's nice today?
It's beautiful out, already outside. Had a little exercise, took my dog out. Life is good.
Good. So let's get started. You have a great career, actually one that we've talked about that I kind of want to emulate in my own life. But to recap, a very 25 plus years in the industry, I'll do my best, but I know it won't encapsulate it perfectly. You graduated from the University of Illinois, ILL, just like myself.
All
right. Very involved there. You had your first job. Was it at Leo Burnett?
First real job.
A
job was Leo Burnett, and was there for 25 plus years, on and off, different subsidiaries within.
Right. So Leo Burnett, and everybody from Chicago, most of our listeners are from U of I. Everybody knows Leo Burnett. That's a big name. But you've also worked at Y&R, which has recently merged with VML, which is a powerhouse agency right now that should be on people's radar. As well as FCB in Chicago. That's in the John Hancock building. And also still alive, doing great work. But you started, you have a pretty long stint here at ARC Worldwide, which was bought by Leo Burnett. Am I correct on that?
Right. All part of the Publicis Group network, correct?
Yep. Publicis, the third largest, I believe. I'm not sure what the stats are now with COVID, but Publicis, third largest holding company. I think WPP and then IPG and then Publicis. I could be wrong on IPG as a second, but those are also familiarize yourself with those holding companies as a student, because they have hundreds of agencies within their conglomerates. But to kind of show this shift that you've had from the long stint at Leo and these great creative powerhouse traditional agencies, you kind of broke into education with a stint at Marquette as an adjunct faculty lecturer, now today, Loyola University in Chicago.
Yeah, and some late breaking news. It looks like I'll be teaching spring semester at Illinois, one online class. So stay tuned for that. More to come.
Wow.
So looking forward to do that. Yep.
That's awesome. What's the class?
Looks to be sports PR. So bring kind of a different look to that. One of my folks that I've worked with in the past, he actually taught me in the SBC program, Steve Raquel.
Yep.
Has taught that class in the past and always had a great following because he brings real world experience. And I hope to, fill those big Chief Illini shoes of Steve. He was the chief. So
he was, we definitely interviewed him. I took that class, that sports marketing class. So big shoes to fill. He was very big on bringing in like his network, and that was awesome. So I'm sure you'll do just the same, if not better. As well, you also do this thing 3.14 communications as the principal there. Tell us about that real quick.
It's just some consulting that I do on the side. Work on a variety of different clients, branding work, even work consulting with how to build teams and how to build stronger relationships with primary and secondary audiences. So Orange Theory, I've worked on a senior living facility, rebranding that and relaunching that successfully. So
Nice.
it's just kind of an area of interest, bringing some of those past experiences. But currently at MX Group, which is a B2B firm working on Holly Frontier, which is an industrial greases lubrication client based out of Canada, but has a worldwide footprint.
That's what you're doing now?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and you're doing more consulting work there as well?
It's a full-time gig as a group account director. And
Oh,
then I just kind of fill things in, like you're saying, in terms of teaching and doing some side consulting. Everybody's got a side hustle, Gino, right? So that's my side hustle in my second half of my the back half of my career. Second half.
you stay busy then. If you
Uh,
got the full time, you're also
yeah,
doing consulting on the side and you're teaching some classes. So,
yeah, yeah. Kind of give and take at different times as my schedule allows.
wow. So we'll definitely have to probably talk about like the time management aspect of that. But
Yeah,
let's kick it
another
back.
time.
Let's kick it back to your kind of overview of your hardcore agency days. What was your role? You were predominantly what, an account executive or a strategist? Yeah, I know you probably dabbled around, but what was your main, where did you fall into for the most part?
Account management side. Burnett is very smart. They try to groom their people before they put them into those kind of roles where you're client facing. They have a training program. So at the time, the training program took me through media. So I spent about a year and a half in media working on Kellogg's, buying children's programming in the morning back in the day, and then sometimes we would help out on the adult side of that. But moved into the account management side, had good fortune to work on businesses like United Airlines, Sealy, 7-Up, Allstate, to name a few. On the ARC side, helped run the Whirlpool Maytag business, where we were together with Digitas and led
Yep.
a team of about 50 people. Maytag Man, what you see that's been on air for about the past 5 years.
Yeah.
That was my team that came up with the kind of the refresh of the more contemporized Maytag Man. So real proud of that work. And fun things too, like Mayhem and working with sports properties here in Chicago and outside. And we happened to get lucky. One of those years was when the White Sox won the World Championship too. So that was kind of like
Oh yeah.
cherry on the top.
Yeah. I'm a
As
big
a
Sox
South
fan.
Sider, as a South Sider, that really was kind of special for me.
Where'd where'd you go to high school if you're a South Side guy?
Outside, south suburbs called Thornwood. Um, Claim to fame, Styx, the band Styx,
Yeah.
came out of Thornwood and played the first homecoming. That I wasn't there. I was a wee big child, but Thornwood on the south
Wow.
side. Eddie Curry played for the Bulls, Cliff Floyd for the Cubs, and some other teams. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was a guidance counselor over in Evergreen Park
Oh, really?
for a long
Cool.
time. So if that's, I don't know if that's close or not, but South
Yeah, not
Side,
too far. But
I've
yeah,
been
no,
around.
the airport.
Cool. So Leo Burnett, we got to break it down, right? Because when you hear the name Leo Burnett, people kind of go crazy. I remember when I first decided to go into advertising as a freshman or maybe senior year in high school. A lot of my neighbors like, yeah, advertising, you want to go work at Leo Burnett one day. I'm like, oh, let me go check this out. So it's like the first top of mind, like gut reaction people have, especially in the Chicagoland area, when you say, I want to go into advertising. That's like the end goal. Was that the case? Did it have that allure when you were there? Did you know you were getting into kind of like this premier big time agency?
Yeah, I mean, it did. have that lure, and I think to some degree it still does. Back then,
Absolutely.
agencies were, really kind of looked to by marketing companies to be their partner, and there were fewer media choices, right? And content was that came they came primarily through ad agency development, for larger companies, and it would run, on national television, or you buy local, like we did with Kellogg's in some instances, and print, TV, radio, outdoor. That's what you would do in newspaper. And then, the world kind of blew up when the internet stuck the second time around, and then all the platforms, came into being, and then the mashup between traditional and digital, social, is where we're at today. And
Yeah.
media companies, kind of back in the day were the part of agencies. Now media companies, are separate from them, and platforms call on clients now. I mean, so it's become a even more competitive marketplace for our clients, eyes and dollars.
Right.
And
And
Leo Burnett, Leo Burnett is still there, still doing well, but just is always trying to reinvent itself, right? And find what is their sweet spot. I left it a couple of years ago. Still have good friends that work there, and would very much say that it's a great place to work, great training. But I like to also think, as I tell my students, open your eyes, right? There's, as I've mentioned, the platforms, the media platforms, um, and a lot of the obviously digital social, are ways in to begin your career. And even going client side, clients are bringing in and have, for a number of years, have their own in-house
right.
specialists. So those are all open avenues. It's not just kind of the, I want to work at an agency, I'd love to work at Burnett kind of approach.
Right. Right.
So we'll
That's
probably
the mold.
yeah. I mean, it's one that I think that people kind of fall into that rut and think I need to work in an agency. And what I would say is, there is more opportunity, I think, in startups, and in smaller organizations. So, be very aware and mind those opportunities hard, and do those things, in advance before your senior year if you can, because those are the people that are looking for more of kind of the entrepreneurial spirit of students to solve their problems.
Yeah, but how do you like once it goes to ad week, like Chicago has a lot of small cool startup agencies or just in-house agencies, so there's a lot of different routes to get in. But like I'm looking at this ad week article that just came out, the number one 100 fastest growing agencies, number one on the list is High Dive. That's in Chicago. They, out of all 100 in this article, High Dive was smaller, but by the time it gains recognition by these major publications, it's almost impossible to break into those. So my question really is, what can we do to like research these up and coming agencies? Kind of like investing in a stock, right? Once it's already public, it's kind of like already at its max value. How can we find that on the earlier side? How do we do that proper research?
Honestly, I think it comes through, your network, and finding, those kind of places and spaces by, searching out the internet, looking in kind of maybe some non-traditional areas where, they might be posting, their work. And, also to watching the client side, where are the clients moving their business to? To be honest with you, I'm on the back half of my career, and I don't read, some of those traditional publications that I once did. And that's why I would say, read things like Crane Chicago Business and Wall Street Journal, and, and use your network into the professional side, and ask people who are young, where are the jobs coming from? Because they're the ones, with the networks that you guys have established, that are likely to know about them, because they're like any agency that's growing, they're too busy. They don't need to go and promote themselves, right? People need to find them. And I know it's kind of like, it seems a little bit odd, but that's the truth. There's so right now there, and always, honestly, there's always been a, needing to kind of put your head down and do the work. And then you kind of wake up and say, oh man, we need some more resources. And then you quickly, scour, people's, networks for those contacts. So there isn't like one magic silver bullet or place to go, but it largely probably comes from your network and working the younger professional network to find those kind of up and comers.
All right. So how do you tap, like, what are some of the more successful ways people have reached out to you, or that you recommend tapping into the network, right? Because we have these people on LinkedIn. Some people are more shy, which is fair. And right now it's definitely difficult to kind of get a job or whatever. So how do you tap into your network in a healthy way that's empathetic, that saves their time, and you're not wasting, we don't want to waste anybody's time. So how do you do that?
Well, I think, with more people obviously at home, there isn't the pressure of the office, I feel. I mean, there's pressure to get your work done still, and
Right.
it can be some arguably even harder now, and you work more hours. But I do feel like it's a little bit easier to make time for people. And again, I don't think the world has changed so much with COVID or with technology that you don't do traditional things, right? You said LinkedIn. I don't think that there is a better network than LinkedIn. If there is, someone probably needs to kind of inform me and then bring it forward. But it's the largest, best, quickest way to
Mhm.
kind of make those connections too. I think you've got to be, kind of voracious in terms of your appetite to learn and read. And like you talk about, going to, publications, that's what you need to do. You need to look for virtual events too, where there might be networking going on.
Mhm.
Look to the HR department, right? I mean, they're not just doing hiring, they're constantly scouring LinkedIn and other job sites for prospects, right? They need to build their bench. And I was just talking to the head of client service at my company about how we don't do this, but I don't even remember Burnett even doing much of this, where they were interviewing people. So that's why I would say young people need to proactively go out there and not be afraid to tell their story and to get their resume, or better, their digital portfolio or digital website links in front of these people, and then give them, again, the soundbite of who you are and what separates you. Point of differentiation is something you talk about when you write a brief, like what's
Mhm.
different about my brand.
Sure.
Same holds true for you. That you were in a club, that you held a position in your sorority, or you were an RA, that's good. That demonstrates leadership. But what more are you doing now? Are you going out and maybe solving problems for a small business or a neighbor's business in the area, right?
Right.
You got to be demonstrating that you can solve problems. It's not just that you've been a leader or you've been part of a club or you took some classes, but you have to show, even when you're younger, how you've begun to solve problems. That's what they try to do, obviously, with an interview, is they're looking for a fit, right? It's not just
Mhm.
about personality. It's not just what you put on your resume. They're trying to determine, is Gino a critical thinker? Can they creative problem solve? Do they seem like a team player? How have they solved issues? How have they overcome adversity? Those
Mhm.
are, I think, some of the maybe different ways that you can separate and differentiate yourself when you have that opportunity. And getting in is just, I think it's being creative and being a little bit crafty. And I don't mean in a devious way, but find people that maybe are younger, that know who are the hiring managers that are at a company, and don't be afraid to reach out to them, especially if they're alumni, right? And just make it short, get to the point, and then do the proper follow-up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That, obviously held true 40 years ago, holds true today. I think, you know, to something that I thought you may have said, I guess we'd have to rewind here, the tape, if you will, but you can't be afraid, of bothering them, right? You're not bothering them. If I can find somebody who I know can do a job and fill that slot when the opportunity is there, you've done me a service, because now I have that bench, that internal network of people that I can lean into. And what's happening now, at least at my company, is that very same thing, where I am providing people from my past connections to opportunities that are opening up. And some of these things are not even in account service. They're more on the technical side, because I've heard about somebody's friend or someone within the university that either put themselves forward, to me or through some of my network contacts.
Yes, yes. I want to kind of break down some of those points because those you just said some great things. I think the first lesson that I wrote down from what you just said is it's everybody's doing the right things, right? Everybody's involved or they're staying busy. They should be. We're talking about like the real competition or like your peers that are going to make it eventually. They're all doing the right things, but it's not enough to just do the right thing. You kind of have to do the loud thing, the brave thing. So if that is, um, uh, going to your local grocery store and doing advertising for that, standing out in a way that's creative, I think that is against the grain is important. I think whatever that is for you, and we're all in the creative industry, so you take some time to think what skills that you have that can help out your community and then do it. But it's also important to capture and tell that story, right? So if it is a website that you have for yourself, if you have a channel, some sort of content stream that really depicts what you're doing clearly is very important. So people like recruiters, like you said before, can acknowledge you on your platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, that you can stand out. But it's also important, I think, we talk about LinkedIn a lot, and Rich, I mean, you're the perfect demographic for LinkedIn. And you have to understand that demographic that is on LinkedIn. However, if you are trying to reach out to somebody that is like your son, Luke, uh, I wouldn't go maybe necessarily the LinkedIn route. Maybe I would go DM him on Twitter, or I would or try to get a message on Twitter. So it's understanding that demographic and how you can reach out, because Twitter, Instagram, other social media channels, those are perfectly legal as long as you are following the social norms that we kind of all understand as Gen Z and millennials. You can do that. So this is great stuff here. Is there anything else like with network tapping into that you found? Maybe you've had like an experience where somebody just did it really well with you and you were able to help out.
First I want to say just about social media presence too. Two things. One is in solving those business problems, likely given people's background and what they've been trained, through their university classes and projects, that is significant. And in understanding the platform, because you guys are digital natives more than I think a lot of the people maybe that might be running businesses, that is an advantage. That's where I think, don't forget to do those things. And the second part about the digital is make sure your digital presence is something that an employer is wanting in you, meaning um, that you did a lot of funny or cool things socially, and they happened after 5 o'clock. Make sure that those things are not um, unprofessional, if you will.
Yeah.
So keep those things in mind.
I want to talk about that too, though, because
Okay.
um, I in the advertising Twitter realm, which Twitter, depending on what type of content you follow, your feed the algorithm will show content tailored to you, whether that's creepy or not. We can talk about that for days with like that new documentary. But the advertising Twitter world is interesting. It is not as uh, prim and proper as LinkedIn, and that's okay. It's by design that way. You don't have to have these super professional or profound thoughts on Twitter. A lot of these advertising professionals, I don't they're like sometimes like inappropriate, but they're themselves, and that's more that copy and creative world. But that can kind of give you some salvation as well. You don't want to be going like saying super bad stuff, but it is kind of like a freedom of expression in the advertising Twitter realm. Maybe that's when you break in, but something worth noting that you don't have to stress too much about like the nitty gritty of your professional portfolio on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, again, you just got to know the medium, right? And
Right.
again, know your audience, right? And the way you know your audience is, I would say, check out the platforms of Burnett. Check out the platforms of Havas. I know Havas is much more edgier, right? Edelman probably is somewhere in between those two
Mm-hmm.
as a company.
Very straightforward, Edelman.
Right. So again, know your audience, with that. And again, in your discipline too, exactly. I think creatives, obviously, you can be a little bit more cutting edge. You can be a little bit more flip, right? But
Right.
again, I would say look at the organization before,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of draw, your own kind of view of it from conversation. Really kind of study that a bit. And again, not like you have to change things to your point,
No.
but just know what it is, right? Because maybe that's not the company you want to work for, right? Maybe that's not the fit, down the line because they're a little bit more buttoned up. And
Mm-hmm.
some people want that. Other people want a little bit kind of fast and loose, right? So
Right.
that's again from doing your homework.
And that's so important. Doing your homework is surrounding yourself with like this material. If you want to go all in and you say, hey, I want to break into advertising, like that kind of needs to be like what content you're consuming all the time, whether you're talking about it with friends, like with people that that are also in advertising, but you need to start subscribing to all the resources that we put on the Instagram. You need to, that you should want to as well. So it probably comes natural to those that really want a long career in the space, but that also helps.
Right. Absolutely. And, look for people, look at campaigns, look at work that's out there, from traditional companies and non-traditional companies and from service sector and fashion and other things in culture. Not just those things, but a wide swath of it. I think sometimes students get caught up in loving fashion or loving music, and they get kind of like tunnel vision on that stuff. And I say you're way too early in your career to be kind of like picking one sole path, right?
Right.
It's good to have that kind of passion and interest in it, but understand the difference between passion and what is maybe a hobby of yours or an interest versus what is kind of a career path, right? Because I will tell you, things like music, things like fashion are even more finite in terms of their opportunity, unless you want to kind of like go out on your own or go out with a one or two person kind of situation. But then you're really walking a tightrope, right? And there isn't that stability of maybe some more of that traditional side. But again, maybe people are ready, willing, and able to make that investment early in their careers and experience that and then slide over to something else. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's your own personal journey, and how you get there is really your path. Just like when you're at an organization, your career development is on you. It's not on your supervisor. It's not on the organization. Yes, they help, but it's on you really to get that upward trajectory in that organization if you want, or that sideways move to take you on a different path, right?
Nice.
So,
That's a good segue. Then we can dive a little bit more into once you get into that first job, which we don't talk about much on this show, and I promise that in the trailer that I never really touch upon. What are some of those ways? Like, let's say you are an entry level account an AAE at XYZ agency, just your traditional, more digital agency. What are some of those good habits that we can start developing now, maybe while we're not employed, that will help us grow within the agency?
well, I think again, you got to know your craft, right? And the way you learn about and know that craft is through informational interviews. It's from continuing to network and talk to people. It's getting involved in professional organizations, even if you don't have a job. Oftentimes, I'll call out one. I was a board member for a period of time with Chicago Ad Federation. Great
Mhm.
group, very active.
Yes.
They're doing it digitally now, right? There is a subgroup within there called Young Professionals that I, with another person, help to kind of reform within there. They they welcome in people who not only are in the business but have an interest. And at the time, it was a $25 or $50, membership fee, I think, to belong. Those are ways that you can go in and network and watch and learn, even if you are not in it yet, right? So it kind of serves multiple purposes there by getting into those
Right.
places, spaces, right? There is no magic, right, to hard work and networking, right? It's just how do you go into that? And just because you have a friend, of a family member or something, and they're there and they've taken your portfolio or your resume, that is just the tip of the iceberg of what you should be doing, right? You should be trying to find 5 or 10 people in that organization to talk to. You should ask them to introduce you to people, to talk to other people, to learn about, to your
That's the
point.
call to action.
Yeah, absolutely. And then do the follow-up, and each person's follow-up may be different. So you've got to keep a log of that, right? Have a little spreadsheet of that, just like you would with a job search, because you are going to run into these people again. It's somewhere down the line. My son, right? His company's doing well, but I always encourage him, go out to lunch with those people where you intern. Talk to that person at the place that you interned at that now is at a different place, because that's how your next job happens. That's how they learn about you and what your growth is at that organization, or maybe someone that wants to make a move. And if it's not you, you can refer somebody. And that's always, appreciated by that individual. It's a give and take, right? Don't forget, it's the adage of, value, what's the value proposition? Like, what does the consumer want? What is the seller giving, right? It's the same thing too. It's not just their time and interest. They're learning about you. You may be a future hire of theirs, right? You hope maybe are telling something to them about what's going on in the marketplace, because, you are a consumer of that good, right? Think about, what is their interest? What is their passion? What you can give back to someone. Don't go in there with selfish intentions. Go in there with a kind of a giving attitude, right? And I believe in putting good karma out there, right? And that's putting good karma. It's not just to get it back, right? But, you just got to put it out there. Steve Raquel, he's a guy who puts a lot of good karma out there, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he talks to me, and, he helped me leverage into, the opportunity to teach what maybe will be his class. So I so appreciate that. But Steve and I have known each other for, honestly, probably 15, if not more years. And I, hopefully share some things with him that he learns from, and he knows he can go to me as a resource. The same holds true whether you have a job or not, right? You can't be afraid to put yourself out there. And you said the word, not in this context, shy. This business, you can't be shy, right? If you're shy, you're probably not going to have success as quickly as you could if you just kind of put yourself out there. And you know what? There's so many people out there, and it is a small incestuous network. You just got to kind of give it up and go into it with the thought, knowing that I'm going to learn something, and I might give something back to that person too, in that conversation or in that email that I send them. So,
is there a difference between, there's got to be a difference between shy and introverted, right? I'm not an introvert and I'm not very shy, so I'm not really an expert on the difference. I know there are past guests that I've had on this show that kind of speak more towards that, but shy, I would imagine, is the being afraid to reach out and intimidated, while introverts just prefer maybe to be in their own head, or just do not prefer to be out and about as much. That's probably a poor shot of way of describing it, but introverts are still very intellectual, and they still contribute in a different way. But when you're shy, it's like you just don't even try.
Right. And again, and I know people who are introverts, but introverts, for the most part, speaking for client service, tend not to be in the particular discipline, right?
In the client side, right?
Yeah. Well, either way, right? When there's about relationship and day-to-day project management, because obviously there's a lot of personal connectivity that's going on, and introverts, for the most part, shy from that until they have that kind of that comfort level, right?
Sure.
So I think they tend to find their way more into strategy, maybe more into the quantitative analytics side. And so there are places and spaces for them as well, where it is a little bit more of independence that you do. You may work in teams, but they may be smaller teams. It may not be the volume that an account person does or a creative does, right? But that's the kind of stuff I would hope you would be finding out, in your freshman and sophomore year of college.
Right.
If you are, if that is your personality makeup, because if you have graduated and you want to go account work and you know that you are an introvert, it will be harder for you. I will tell you, it will be hard just to make that connection to get a job interview, and then much less get hired. And again, it's not saying you can't, but just you got to know who you are and what the
Right.
role calls for, right? So do your research, do your homework again about, what is required in that role. And,
Yeah.
maybe it's you belong somewhere else, right? With your talents and skills and, your personal makeup. And that's not a fault or negative, right? It's just knowing where is your lot in life. What is the lane where you can contribute? That's all.
Yep, yep. And I think like I can recall back to Steve Hall's my freshman year lecture with Steve Hall in Advertising 150. He just basically went through the basics of each role, and you kind of know which one like pops your head up. Like, oh, that sounds like me. So
Right.
just remember those roots.
Yeah.
Like I just went through kind of like this identity shift from all of college. Even before college, I knew I wanted to be in an account side, account executive, account manager, whatever you want to call it. But with this podcast and starting it up, doing kind of like most of the work on the floor end, I was like, maybe strategy is something I'm interested in. So for about a couple weeks, I was like in this strategy mode, and I was like, oh, I really can see myself in this strategy position. And it wasn't really working out with the conversations and the network I was tapping into, and just the conversations. I was like, I got to go back to my account because that's who I am. Like
Yeah.
I just had to be true to myself. Maybe down the line, but for right now, I know that's still my goal, is to be a great account
Yeah.
service.
Here's what I would say about strategy when that calls to the account people or maybe to a
Because it
creative.
happens.
Yeah. I mean, it does happen, but the reality is that a strategist, I think, grows into being a strategist because they're the ones who are kind of charged with kind of framing the problem and helping to develop, the insights and painting the picture of the target audience. When you're 21, 22 years old, unless you are a genius, you don't know the world enough. You don't know the resources. You don't know how to kind of
Right.
shape and tell that story. That comes with time, and you can kind of grow into that role. And I think you see account people migrate over, and that's what I would, any of you people that are thinking about it out there, it may just come a little bit later in life, right? And I would say hang with the strategists, and see what they do, and take on small, what would be strategy projects, and from your boss, and see if they really are your calling, right? So don't turn that light off in your head. Just kind of take it down a notch or two, and see if that bulb illuminates a little bit more later on, is what I'd
I
say.
like that. I like that because part of insights and developing those insights is understanding humans
Mhm.
and what drives humans and their decision making process. As a 22-year-old, going to be 23 soon, what do I know? Like I might know a little bit, but I need to take time to form into that. But what about the roles like junior brand strategists? I see those have been popping up. Are they looking for like to form somebody into a strategist, or is it usually somebody transfers in? How does that traditional route look?
I think there isn't a one size fits all answer to
Sure.
that. I think you have to get into the organization and meet those people and understand, first ask them what was their journey to this role, and where do they see it going within this organization and larger. And then the second question would be, you know what called you into this role. So understand the side of the company and what they look for, but understand what was that person's personal journey into that. And
Mhm.
then take that and go to the next agency and ask those same questions of that junior strategist or strategist,
Yeah.
and, and ask that question of, if you don't get to them, go to the HR person or ask the account person, how does that happen? How does a person get into strategy? Do they hire into that role, or is it really something that someone migrates over to within the company, right?
Yep.
Um, and same sometimes happens with creative. I've seen that happen, but generally speaking, it's more the build your portfolio, and you find someone that takes you in.
I
That
don't know, that realm of advertising seems crazy to me. I have interviewed creatives. I am friends with a lot of creative. I've worked with a lot of creatives. I don't know. If you were to quiz me right now on how a creative gets their job. I would say something portfolio has to be good. And that's maybe a good website. I don't really know how that world works, and I'm just kind of glad I'm not in it. That's just not who I am. But I props to everybody listening that is a creative. That's a tough, it's a tough break in. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, but the short answer, if I'll just take that as a question, even though you're not asking me,
Yeah,
is
I'll ask it.
a group creative director sees something in that portfolio and they take them under the wing. I've seen that happen. I'd say 50 to 75% of the time. That's how they get their job. Whereas a strategist, it doesn't go that way. It's they've come over from another department, or they start just kind of picking up assignments, and answering some questions, and then lo and behold, they become a strategist. But more the creative comes from someone taking them under their wing because they've seen something in their portfolio that has been worked over 100 times, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure that you've gotten that in another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any other like basic advice that you have? We know how to do the right things, the importance of networking. Is there any like words of wisdom you might have before we wrap it up, that some motivation or some tangible advice you might have that's different against the grain for our students listening?
Um, I would say you got to be your best cheerleader. No one's going to sit there and give you a job, and you've got to really have the passion and fire inside you to be absolutely relentless in it. And relentless is not outward; it's inward.
Ooh.
I am a little bit older. I have some experience, but in this movement in my career where I have a lot of experience, but now I want to, maybe hopefully make a difference and try some things on the academic side. I need to be relentless in this. I need to use my network. I need to demonstrate different skills and experiences or accentuate other positives that are of value to my buyer, right? And
Yep.
I need to kind of always stay on top of it, right? It doesn't, it doesn't happen because someone remembered me suddenly, right? It more often has come because I've picked up, the phone and had some personal connection with them. I've, sent them a note, reminding them about something that we had talked about that, came across my gray matter I saw in Wall Street Journal or someone mentioned to me, right? It came from a new opportunity that I think would work for that person, and I'm giving them something. But you've got to be relentless. You got to be wanting to give people gifts, intellectual gifts of what's inside you, and those to me are demonstrations of what's going to separate you and keep you top of mind for that moment when they do have a position, right? Or there's this little project, but they don't, know what to do with it. And you are standing in the front of the line in their memory, right? Or
Yeah.
you talk to them, right, about this. And it's not just because I'm a little bit older than you, Gino, but it's because it works. I'm telling you, the face to face when we get out of this COVID situation, or at the very least, picking up the phone and having a connection or a visual connection, through the different platforms like
Mhm.
Zoom or Google Meetup, right? Do those things. Try to make, hear a voice, see the eyes, especially in this time. And don't just leave it up to an email, right? I think we all are dying for more connections, right? And, the spirit and passion of a person who wants to get in the business and is trying to demonstrate, that they're working hard toward that. And maybe, when the moment is right, can give a gift,
Sure.
is what is going to separate you. And again, be relentless in that because you need to do it, not the person getting back to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Everybody's okay to reach out to you, Rich, to connect and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn, and always happy to have a chat with students when I'm in the classroom. They have my personal information too when I teach. And for those of you that might be at Loyola or at U of I, If you see a class with Pieczynski behind it,
Take it.
take it, please.
Yeah.
I want to get to know you, love to help you, because it goes beyond just what I'm going to teach. I promise you, it's about developing this network. You guys are the future. You need to leverage people like myself and those who have experience and that want to give that additional. And I hope, that's what I can give back in the last 15, 20 years of my work life here.
Well, on behalf of all students, we appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. You do the same. Thanks, Gino. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Breaking and Entering podcast. Got to do my shout outs. Shout out to Rich. Great guy. We've been in contact for a long time now. Everybody should go reach out to him. If you're at Loyola or UIUC, go ahead and sign up for his classes. Now for our team. Mikey Malarkey, audio engineer. Buchun Jung, our graphic designer, creative director. Audrey Nussbaum, co-host. Kyle Moore, our strategist. And our Midnight Oil student team. Thank you to everybody. Can't do it without you. We will see you all next week.